Every Day the River Changes by Cebo Campbell. The world shifted on its axis one ordinary morning. They were gone. All the white people in America vanished in a single silent act of mass drowning. No one saw it coming. No one was prepared for the gaping hole their absence carved in the fabric of society. Jails stood open. Banks became monuments to forgotten gods of commerce, and time itself seemed to slow its frantic pace, adopting a languid southern drawl. In this altered world, we meet Charlie Brunton, a black man, a former prisoner now bewilderingly finding himself a professor at Howard University. He lived in a borrowed suburban house, a relic of the vanished, trying to erase the echoes of its previous inhabitants. He packed away their family photos, their mementos, anything that conjured the world that was. Yet despite the outward changes, inside, Charlie still wore the invisible stripes of his prison uniform, bewildered by his improbable transformation from inmate to educator. He found a strange comfort in the familiar prickle of fear before each lecture, a sensation that reminded him of his past struggles, a sense of self forged in overcoming terror. One day, a student, Gerald, a sharp young man with a keen mind, questioned the logic of simply retrofitting old systems. He asked, why not just put solar panels on existing houses instead of rebuilding the entire electrical grid? Charlie, with a passion that surprised even himself, explained the philosophical necessity of dismantling the old order, of creating a new system rooted in freedom and sustainability, powered by the ever-present sun, a source belonging to everyone. After class, Charlie sought refuge in the quiet corners of the bustling campus, marveling at the vibrant energy of Howard, a beacon in a changed world. He observed the smiles, the laughter, the music, a testament to the enduring resilience of black joy, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Yet, a profound conflict gnawed at him. He understood the historical significance of this new world, but felt strangely detached, unable to fully embrace the joy that surrounded him. Charlie wrestled with his own darkness, a weight he carried long before the event, a bitterness rooted in the insidious language of bias, in the world's reaction to his very being. He questioned his own goodness, his own worth, haunted by the dictionary definition of black he'd read in prison: absence of light, soiled, wicked, evil. Relief, a dark, unsettling relief, was the only emotion he could truly grasp in the wake of the mass drowning. As evening descended, Charlie retreated to his small, comforting office, a sanctuary of wood paneling and dusty blinds. He drank cheap bourbon, seeking solace in the numbing embrace of alcohol, drifting in and out of sleep, wrestling with the same perpetual questions of self and purpose. Just as he teetered on the edge of despair, the landline phone rang, jolting him from his stupor. A hesitant, young woman's voice, fragile as a mouse in the dark, emerged from the receiver. "Hello," she whispered. "This is Elizabeth's daughter." Elizabeth. The name resonated like a ghost, flooding Charlie's senses with the scent of lavender and a jolt of disbelief. Daughter. A word that echoed impossibly in the silent office. The woman's voice, thick with sadness and anger, confessed her isolation, her contemplation of joining the departed. Then a desperate plea: You owe me. So I called to ask you to take me there." "Take her where?" "To a place for people like me," she'd said, a phrase that hung heavy in the air. Before Charlie could fully process her words, the line went dead. He sat in the deepening silence, shame washing over him. He had forgotten the letter tucked away in his filing cabinet, the letter from Elizabeth detailing their daughter's existence. He had been so consumed by his own darkness, his own conflict, that he had never considered the possibility of her survival, never once thought to look back. But now, the questions surged, demanding answers. "Where are you?" he asked into the empty line. "Where are you?" "Wisconsin," the voice returned, ghostly in his memory. "Outside of Oshkosh, on Lake Winnicott. I'm in D.C., I can get to you." He promised, a vow echoing in the silent office. "Tell me your address." 2580 Sunset Lane. Then a sharp, defiant declaration. "I know right now you probably think I'm your daughter, but I'm not. Your blood might be in me, but that doesn't make you my father." And the line went dead again, leaving Charlie alone with the storm of his own making. He drank until the darkness consumed him, pulling him down into the yawning fathoms of deep, deep darkness. In Wisconsin, on the shores of Lake Winneconne, Sydney Wagoner burned eggs while straightening her hair, the smell of smoke a jarring contrast to the summer's end anticipation of leaving for college. Her twin brothers wrestled loudly, a familiar chaos soon replaced by an unsettling quiet. Sydney, scrutinizing her reflection, felt a pang of inadequacy, a sense of unreadiness for the world beyond her home, a world everyone else seemed to expect her to conquer. The smell of burning eggs intensified, but the usual brotherly commotion ceased. A strange quiet descended. Looking out the window, Sydney saw her stepfather, Rick, wading fully clothed into the lake, a bizarre and unprecedented act. She called for her mother, but only the acrid smell of smoke answered. Descending the stairs, Sydney found her brothers standing silently at the bottom, their blue eyes fixed, glazed, listening to something beyond the walls of the house. They seemed entranced, oblivious to her questions. The fire alarm shrieked, a futile attempt to break the spell. In the kitchen, her mother stood frozen over the smoking pan, spatula in hand, eyes mirroring her son's, all three fixed on the unseen horizon. Sydney watched, paralyzed by a terror she couldn't comprehend. Her mother moved, walking serenely onto the deck, never breaking her gaze from the lake. Her brothers followed, trance-like, drawn to the water's edge. They advanced into the lake like penguins answering an irresistible call. Ripples disturbed the lake's surface, bubbles rising. Rick had gone under and not resurfaced. Silent death permeated the air. Sydney screamed, a desperate attempt to break the spell. She grabbed her mother, pulling, pleading, but her mother moved with unnatural strength, unfazed. She tackled Adam, but he convulsed, foaming at the mouth, a terrifying seizure that forced her to release him. He rose and continued his march into the water. Sydney plunged into the frigid lake, wading deeper, following her family into the brown depths, her heart pounding against the impossible silence of the water. Up to her knees, her waist, her chest, she followed until the blonde tips of her mother's hair floated on the surface, until her brothers submerged, until the lake floor vanished beneath her feet. She dove, desperate to pull them back, but their bodies felt like lead, walking with an inexorable purpose across the lake bed. Underwater, she fought, screamed silently, until her lungs burned and she had to surface, gasping for air, the image of her family receding into the murky depths imprinted on her mind. She tried again and again, diving, pulling, screaming, until exhaustion claimed her. Floating on her back, the sweet scent of her mother's lavender garden mingling with the acrid smell of smoke, Sydney watched her family disappear beneath the still, brown surface of Lake Winneconne. Charlie dreamt of lavender, a scent that carried him through the whiskey-hazed night, the voice of Elizabeth's daughter echoing in his thoughts. He spent the early hours charting a course to Wisconsin, a journey complicated by the scarcity of charging stations and cleared roads. The event had created a world of uncertainty, a stark contrast to the rigid structure of prison, yet a world demanding a new kind of navigation. He pondered the nature of the event, concluding it was tied to identity, to the unspoken but deeply felt hierarchy of American aspiration, where whiteness was the default, blackness the avoided. He considered the fractured state of the nation, the absence of unity, the shift of power to local, often ill-equipped hands. Despite the chaos, a yearning for stability, a remnant of his prison days, surprised him. He yearned for the certainty, however brutal, of the old order. Yet, a new purpose stirred within him, seeing Elizabeth's daughter. Fear and anticipation warred as he packed a bag, leaving notes for his students, and finally retrieving the letter from Elizabeth from his filing cabinet, the only tangible link to the daughter he had never known. Leaving D.C., he observed the city's vibrant energy, a resilient pulse of black life amidst the altered world. He drove for hours, the open road stretching before him, a black ribbon stitching together the fractured nation. Pennsylvania's forests unfurled in autumnal splendor, a vast, untamed beauty. He saw abandoned houses and neighborhoods, silent testaments to the vanished. Virginia's hills echoed with vacancy, a graveyard stretching across the land. Ohio was desolate, the roads empty, houses dark, the vastness of America starkly revealed. Then, the landscape transformed. Fire. Everything burned, mile after mile of charred earth. His electric car's charge dwindled as he drove through the scorched wasteland, a deliberate act of absolution etched into the blackened landscape. Despair tightened its grip until, on the horizon, a yellow house emerged, a beacon of hope in the lifeless expanse. He reached the yellow house just as his car sputtered to a halt, completely depleted. Solar panels gleamed on the back of the house, a promise of power. As he plugged in his car, an old woman appeared on the porch, Ethel, her presence radiating a surprising sense of peace. She invited him in, her voice a soft southern drawl, her eyes holding the wisdom of generations. Ethel offered him food, a warm meal in a house filled with the ghosts of family photos, generations of black life in rural America. They spoke of the burned earth, the event, and the new world taking shape. Ethel revealed she had set the fires, a cleansing act to make way for new life. She spoke of resilience, of enduring joy, and the importance of understanding the why, not just the how. Charlie spent the night in Ethel's spare bedroom, the wind howling outside, the scent of hard candy and warm air filling the house. He thought of his daughter Sydney, the name a whisper in the darkness, and knew he had to reach her, to face the questions that awaited him in Wisconsin. Charlie continued his journey, leaving Ethel's house with a renewed sense of purpose and a nearly full charge. Indiana unfolded in silence, a stark contrast to the bustling cities. He passed other travelers, glimpses of a nation in flux, people seeking a fresh start in a world suddenly unbound by old rules. He imagined them claiming abandoned mansions and vast stretches of land, a freedom born from catastrophe. He pondered the irony of his own limited aspirations in this new world, realizing how little of America he had ever truly considered his to claim. Approaching Lake Winnebago, the silence deepened. Fond du Lac was a ghost town, its charm decaying in vacancy. Oshkosh led him to Sunset Lane and the imposing Wagoner estate, a florid iron gate guarding a sprawling property. Elizabeth Wagoner. He uttered her name, a ghost in his mouth. He felt a mix of trepidation and a strange, defiant pride as he waited at the gate. Her voice, his daughter's voice, crackled through the speaker, confirming his arrival, laced with disbelief. "I didn't think you would come." She granted him entry, but the gate opened with a mechanical reluctance. Driving up the long driveway, the house loomed larger, a 3-story Southern-style plantation home incongruous in the Wisconsin landscape. A generator sputtered, a stark reminder of the fragility of the new world's infrastructure. As he stepped out of the car, the front door opened just a crack, a sliver of darkness in the all-white facade. Not an invitation, but a tense truce. Inside, the scent of lavender, Elizabeth's scent, washed over him, a poignant ghost of the past. Then a long rifle appeared, pointed directly at his face, his daughter. Standing in the foyer, weapon in hand, her eyes cold and steady. "Is that why you called me here? To shoot me?" Charlie asked, his voice calm despite the tremor in his chest. "We both know if that was the case, you'd deserve it," she retorted, lowering the rifle slightly, her gaze unwavering. He saw a flicker of Elizabeth in her features, a haunting echo of the woman he had loved and lost. She was younger than he expected, 19, but hardened by a life he couldn't imagine. She questioned his wilder appearance, a subtle jab at his past. He noted her fierce independence, her guarded demeanor. She offered him water and beans, a meager offering in a grand house, a house she seemed determined to protect. "What's your name?" he asked, a simple request weighted with years of absence. "Why does my name matter to you?" she countered, her defensiveness palpable. "I know right now you probably think I'm your daughter, but I'm not." The generator outside sputtered, a clock ticking down their limited time together. "An hour, max," she declared, "and then we go." Charlie nodded, a silent agreement to her terms. He had come to Wisconsin seeking answers, seeking connection, but standing before his daughter, he understood the vast chasm of years and silence that separated them. He had a long, arduous path ahead if he wished to bridge that gap. Charlie waited outside the Wagoner mansion, the generator's hum a constant reminder of their limited time. Inside the house, Sydney moved with a practiced familiarity, strapping the rifle over her shoulder, a natural extension of herself. He followed her into the vast, white interior, observing the stark contrast to the vibrant energy of Howard University. The house felt cold, a mausoleum of a vanished world. She questioned his profession, his sudden emergence as a professor, her tone laced with disdain. She yearned for the world before, a world of standards and order, a world Charlie knew had never truly existed for people like him. He countered, describing the new world outside her walls, a world of thriving black communities, of newfound freedoms, a world she refused to see. "You mean before the world died," she corrected, her words revealing a profound disconnect. She saw only destruction, a world lost to heathens. He realized her isolation had warped her perception, trapping her in a castle of fear and resentment. She spoke of protecting her grandmother's house, her inheritance, her fortress against a world she deemed hostile. Her reason for calling him, she revealed, was purely practical. She needed a driver. She couldn't drive herself, and time was running out. She wanted to go south, to Kenosha first, then Alabama. He warned her against the South, a dangerous unknown in this new world. "They," she repeated, using the same distancing language she used for heathens, a word that excluded herself and him from some imagined us. "You haven't left this house, have you?" he asked, understanding dawning. She confirmed his suspicion, revealing her self-imposed imprisonment since the event, her isolation a stark contrast to the vibrant world beyond her walls. He challenged her, suggesting anyone could give her a ride, but she insisted on him, declaring, "I did ask an anybody, you." Anger flashed in her eyes, a raw, untamed emotion. "I'll let the generator run for another hour, then we leave. Got it?" Before leaving, Charlie made a final attempt to break through her hardened shell. He described the world outside as not hell, but a place of thriving communities, of happiness, of self-discovery. "You're locked up here in your castle thinking we are all damned. But we're the lucky ones," he insisted. "Lucky how?" she scoffed, the word laced with bitter irony. He spoke of their shared history, of centuries of oppression, of the resilience of black survival. "Ain't no other people in the history of the world ever had so little a serving of living as us, and now we got all of it." She stared at him, fighting back tears, her voice tight with emotion. "We? There is no we. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be living at all. No thanks to you." She demanded to know why he had left, where he had been all her life. Charlie was silenced by the weight of his past, unable to articulate the years of prison, the darkness that had consumed him. "Didn't think you'd have much to say," she concluded, her voice cold. "I don't want to hear your excuses anyway. Outside. Now. I'll be ready in an hour." Numbly, Charlie retreated, his mind reeling. Outside, the harsh daylight felt confrontational, exposing his own conflict. He was nothing to her but an emptiness, a blank space she could fill with any narrative, any judgment. But within that void, a flicker of hope ignited. In his daughter's innocence, he saw a chance for his own redemption, a chance to reshape the narrative of his own darkness. Sydney watched Charlie retreat, a wave of annoyance washing over her. The undeniable resemblance to him, the nose, the lips, the eyes, it irritated her to see herself reflected in a man who was essentially a stranger, a man her mother had painted as a villain. Slumping onto her makeshift bed in the living room, she felt the weight of her unreadiness for the world beyond the Wagoner estate, a world everyone else seemed to be navigating with a newfound ease. She rummaged through her bag, filled more with her mother's belongings than her own. Jewelry, scarves, diary pages, dresses, tangible fragments of a life now vanished. Deep inside, she clutched Agnes's note, a lifeline in the vast emptiness. "We are not all gone. We are not all gone. Orange Beach, Alabama, Aunt Agnes, family." The note was a fragile promise, a whisper of hope in the suffocating silence of her loss. Suddenly, the house alarms blared, shattering the quiet. She had forgotten to close the gate. Rifle in hand, she sprinted to the door, the note's message echoing in her heart. "We are not all gone. We are not all gone." Outside, Charlie saw a figure running towards the house, a jubilant child, dark as a shadow, dreadlocks bouncing. Then, the rifle barrel appeared beside Charlie, his daughter's weapon aimed not at the child, but at the innocent joy he represented. "Get off my property!" Sydney's voice, deepened with forced authority, cracked the air. Terror washed over the child's face, his laughter frozen mid-leap. Another figure emerged from the trees, a white man, the child's father, pleading, "Please don't shoot, that's my son." Sydney's rifle shifted, now aimed at the father. "Stop, or I will shoot you, both of you," she repeated, words learned from a world now gone, a world of fear and division. She tightened her grip on the trigger, ready to fire. Then Charlie moved. He stepped in front of the barrel, his voice calm but firm. "No, I can't let you do this." He appealed to the shared darkness in their eyes, the shared questions that haunted them both. "Put the gun down. You gonna shoot that man and his kid? You gonna live with a death on your hands for the rest of your life?" His words, his unexpected act of protection, seemed to pierce through Sydney's rage and fear. Her tension eased, the rifle lowered. Charlie turned to the father, reassuring him, then back to Sydney, his gaze holding a mixture of concern and a nascent understanding. He had glimpsed the depths of her isolation, the darkness that fueled her fear. The family retreated, disappearing back into the trees. Sydney, rifle slack in her hand, vanished into the house, leaving Charlie alone in the charged silence. He followed her inside, finding her at the lake's edge, staring out at the still, brown water, a graveyard reflecting the sky. That night, Charlie dreamt of lavender again, the scent now intertwined with the image of his daughter's face, her rifle, her fear. He wrestled with the weight of his past, the burden of his darkness, and the daunting uncertainty of the journey ahead. He was heading south into the unknown, guided only by a voice in the dark and the fragile hope of connection. Sydney sat by the lake, her mother's words echoing in her mind. "A shore knows, a shore always knows." She felt the weight of being special, of being different, a feeling amplified by her family's tragic end. She saw Charlie approach, his presence a disruption to her solitary grief. He spoke of her actions with the gun, acknowledging her fear, but urging her to see herself not as left behind, but saved. He spoke of unfairness, of life and death, and of the need to understand she was not responsible for her family's fate. Then a shift. She revealed her name. "My name is Sydney. My mother named me Sydney." The name, his name, hung in the air between them, a fragile bridge across the chasm of their shared history. "She named you Sydney?" He echoed, stunned, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. A connection formed, however tenuous. He asked about her destination, Kenosha, then Alabama. He reiterated his warnings about the South, but she remained resolute, fueled by a desperate hope to find her Aunt Agnes, to find a remnant of her old life. "White people aren't gone. They are alive and thriving down south," she declared, clinging to a belief he found difficult to accept. He spoke of Ethel, of the burned land, of the trauma that scarred the nation. He tried to explain the dangers of the South, the volatility of a land steeped in history and pain. But Sydney remained fixed on her destination, on the fragile hope of Agnes's note. He saw her pain, her loneliness, her desperate need for connection. He relented, promising to take her south, to keep her safe, to honor her desire, however misguided he believed it to be. He offered his word, a hand extended, a grip that felt like the beginning of a climb. "Say your goodbyes, go in the house and get your things," he instructed. "If we leave now, we can make it to Kenosha before dark." Vivian, in Mobile, stood with her husband Hosea at the corner of Government and Royal Streets, the site of her long fight against the Confederate monument. The fight, she knew, was over. The opposition, the shouts, the flags, all vanished. She felt a profound emptiness, a silence that echoed the silence of the world. "The fight's over, love," she said to Hosea, a quiet resignation in her voice. Vivian retreated into her daughter Nona's room, listening to the murmur of voices. Teenagers gathered around a conjure woman. She heard the prayers, the shuffling of cards, the hushed anticipation. Nona, once resistant to her Haitian heritage, now embraced it, her room a sanctuary for spiritual practices, a testament to a journey of self-discovery Vivian had orchestrated for her children. "Ancestors spread," the conjure woman intoned. "5 cards to hear the guidance of those who came before." Easy, Vivian mused, to hear the ancestors now, in this changed world. A world where the old rules no longer applied, and the voices of the past echoed with newfound clarity. In the morning, Ethel prepared Charlie breakfast, biscuits and eggs, a simple offering of sustenance. He confessed his destination, Wisconsin, his daughter, a daughter whose very existence he had almost forgotten. He admitted his shame, his fear. Ethel listened, offering only a warm smile and a cup of orange juice. With a near full charge, Charlie drove through the silent expanse of Indiana. The vastness of America laid bare before him. He crossed into Ohio, the desolation deepening, mile after mile of empty highway, until the landscape abruptly changed. Blackness, scorched earth stretching to the horizon, a deliberate burn, absolution in ashes. He reached Warsaw, his charge dwindling, fear tightening its grip, when a yellow house appeared, a solitary beacon in the charred wasteland. Ethel's yellow house. He charged his car, met Ethel, shared a meal, and a conversation that resonated deep within his soul. She spoke of burning away the old world, of building anew, of the jewel of the world now in their hands. "Charles, it's okay to be two things at once," she advised, her words a balm to his fractured spirit. "Limit how you feel about any of it, and you are limited." He drove on through Ohio's emptiness, Chicago's bustling energy, and Milwaukee's quietude, until he reached Oshkosh and Sunset Lane. The Wagoner estate loomed, a fortress of white, and then the rifle, his daughter's face, cold and wary. In her eyes, he saw his own darkness reflected, and in that reflection, a flicker of something else, a chance for redemption. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.